Does your ice maker constantly make this squealing sound whenever it's running? Mine started out intermittently, and now it's gotten to the point to where it's constant whenever it's running, making ice. So I'm going to take it apart and figure out where the sound is coming from and try to fix it. I've tried all the remedies that I found online for oiling the fan, oiling the electric motor, this and that, put WD-40 here and there. None of it worked for me. So for the sake of time, what I'm going to do is first show you what the issue was, how I found it, and how I fixed it. And in a separate video, I'll show you how to take the ice maker apart and get to the parts in order to fix them. I've taken the gearbox back out after testing it, with the channel locks, and it was definitely strong, no issues. Put it all back together. It ran for one cycle, and then it started making like a grinding sound. And then it came to the point where it froze up like this here. So it went into defrost mode. It was defrosting, cleared it all up. Then I realized that the extruder, the ice extruder, wasn't turning again like it had before. So I thought it couldn't be the gearbox because I've already tested that and it was good. But I traced my way back down, and lo and behold, I put the electric motor back down in the gearbox and was turning it. Nothing. It wouldn't turn the spline in the gearbox here. So I knew it had to be something going on in here. So I just opened this up. Let's take a look. Here is the gasket that was in it. So when I pulled the bottom of it off, turned it over. But looking at some of these gears and stuff, this is pretty wild. First thing I noticed right when I pulled the lid off was how all the grease was kind of up in one corner. If you'll see the center area right here, it's completely dry. I got this Opal ice maker at the end of August, the beginning of September of 2021, and it is now October of 2025. So I've had it about 4 years, a little over 4 years, and it's been running fine. Of course, it's made the squealing and the squeaks and everything, that people have been complaining about, but it was still making ice up until now. So with this part right here, I'm not even sure what that is just yet, but this gear, I haven't touched none of this yet. So this gear was laying down here, which I think it's supposed to be connected to that bottom piece. This, you can tell, was turning in here and just grinding and grinding, and it got down to metal on metal. As you can see, that's probably what the squealing was. And it even scarred this gear around there from the metal, riding on that. I assume it's a bushing in here. I haven't got that far yet. I think what I'm going to do is get this cleaned up, get all this grease off of it, and then we'll take a better look. Okay, upon inspection after getting the housing cleaned up, this is the top of the gear housing. It goes in the machine like this, where the shaft comes up. Okay, looking at this bearing in the center, seems to be okay. Not much with the top other than that screw stuck in it. I noticed a couple things in here. One being this, I assume it's a bearing or something that sticks in here. You can see how that is just completely eat up, where that one gear has been spinning on it and just chewing that all to pieces. And right next to that, you can see right here around this lip is also chewed up from a gear grinding against that. I'd be willing to bet this was the squealing noises that it's been making for some time. Metal on metal. So if I had it to do over again, knowing what I know now, I believe I would take this gearbox out maybe once a year and inspect it and check the grease and stuff in it to keep this from happening. This is the bottom of that gear that I showed you earlier. And that point right there, I bet was not supposed to be that sharp. That is, it's almost like it's a real sharp point you can see there. And that's just from grinding down in that, against that metal probably the whole time, sharpening like a pencil. This is the only plastic gear in here. And luckily, it looks like all the teeth are good on it. This is the shaft that comes up out of the gearbox. So the bearings appear to be okay there. Yep, that spins. It just spins freely. These bearings appear to be okay. This is what sits down in that housing right there. So something right around this was chewing on the side of that. I'm guessing it was probably this gear sitting next to it that was, I think there's a spindle. If you notice right here on the point, I just see there, I think that is broken off. I think, I'm not 100% sure. And down inside of this little hole here, right there, there was a little bitty piece of metal, like it was the top of a shaft or something that was broke off. It was just laying right there. If I can find it, I lost it here when I was cleaning it. So I think that this gear had something on the bottom of it here that it completely just ring off, and it was laying down in there, and chewing that off the bottom allowed it to flop over sideways a little bit and grind down in there just like that right there. That's the perfect shape of that gear. I purchased this replacement gearbox off of eBay. So what I want to do before I install it is open it up and see what it looks like. It's supposed to be not brand new, but barely used from a surplus machine. So I want to see what the condition of it looks like compared to the shape that mine was in, and see if I can't maybe add a little bit of grease to it to prolong the life of it. All right, and you can see that there's a gasket in here, but from my experience, all of it just should open up pretty good. This is the bottom. So before we get everything lost on these gears, let's turn it over. It's okay if the screws fall out, because the gears are going to be sitting down in this bottom thing. All right. Here you can clearly see, just like my other one was, This gear is pretty much bone dry. All the grease is in this corner right here and around this plastic gear. This hole right here is where the motor shaft sticks down in from on top, right there. So the motor shaft will come down and engage this gear, which will in turn turn this gear. You can see the gear reduction there. And then this gear here goes into here, which turns this, and then eventually this big one, which is the shaft for the ice maker itself. You can see the gear reduction there too, how fast that one turns and how slow this big one turns. And that is very hard to turn by hand. I don't know if it's because all the grease, the thick grease that's in there, but I want to do some comparisons here of this one and my old one that I have cleaned up. Okay, now to compare my old gearbox with this new one to try to kind of identify the failure points. So here's the old gearbox. I've cleaned all these gears up, get them nice and clean so we can kind of see what we're working with here. Pull this old gearbox apart. It's just an open canister here. All right, so we'll put the like parts together. This is the top sections here. We'll look at the top sections first. So you can see everything looks fine on here. These gears, which were, I'll put the old ones back on here and build it. I think it's the metal one there. And then this plastic one goes top down like that. And this is the gear that the electric motor shaft engages to start turning. Okay, so this part all looks good. These gears are all in good shape. There weren't any issues with this. I'll go ahead and set this off to the side. And now we'll look at the bottom section. And now of these bottom ones, this part here, I don't know how well you can tell, but here's the gear that got sharpened like a pencil. It ground all the way down in here. Here's the base of this big gear. And there was a, matter of fact, there were two bearings. One on the bottom here, and then you can see this little one right here that goes on top. So on this new one, or the newer one, you can see this little bearing set on top. And there's also a bearing set on the bottom that sat down in this plate that sat on the top of here, and this sat down like that. But this bottom bearing completely disintegrated. I still couldn't get the outer ring of that bearing out, no matter how much I pried and put, with tools and everything else. That is almost like welded in there. Here is the parts of that bearing, what I could salvage anyway. what I could find. So you can see here that all these bearing pieces were down in there. This was the bearing that was up on top. All of this was just absolutely destroyed. And once that bearing broke apart and collapsed, it wasn't supporting this gear on top of it anymore. Then the metal fell down and was making metal to metal contact on this bottom part. You can see that looks like it went through a pencil sharpener, where it just ground and ground and ground on that. And I'd be willing to bet that's the squealing sound that it makes whenever it's turning. It sounds like mice in there squealing. Guarantee you it's that metal on metal coming apart. You can see here where it ground this metal up, where the edge of that gear, it wasn't supported up anymore on that bearing. It was down on the metal and it rocked over, and you can see where it just ate that out right there. Chewed that all the way off, almost probably 1/8 of an inch there. It ground down into there. This is the bearing that sat on top of here, sat on this little top of this little gear, just like it is over here, which goes up into this hole. So when you turn this over and put this gear in here like that, this goes back on top of it, and that bearing goes into here. It just sandwiches shut. So it holds this gear from bearing on top, bearing on the bottom. So this gear was fine. The main shaft gear that sets down in here like this. It's got a little bearing on top of it. You can see here. Spins just fine. This spins just fine. It was this one gear, or the one bearing underneath this gear, that broke down and caused the whole issue. So this little bearing right here is the problem. Not sure if the bearing will pop off there. It's very easy. It's not coming off, so maybe it's pressed on there. Kind of looks like it is. Bearing on the top, bearing on the bottom. All right, so what I'm going to do for putting this back together, I'm going to leave that factory grease in there, but I'm going to add some CRC red grease, automotive, heavy duty, high temperature. I know it's not going to get that high temperature, but still, this should be something good enough. Keep it going for a little while longer anyway. So under here, we'll try to put some on this ball bearing. Try to work it down in there maybe. That should be good for the bottom section. And do the same thing on the top. Put some underneath there. Just extra. I don't think it'll hurt anything. Trying to wipe it off of this gasket. Keep this gasket clean. Just got some grease all around these, top and bottom. Not sure if that'll help any, but we're going to try it and see. Now these two over here seemed pretty well coated in grease. I don't think they need any more. I'm going to put a little bit of grease down in these holes. For the tops of these pins to set down in there. You can see this one has a little bitty washer or something around it there. Make sure that stays on. Go ahead and sandwich these two together. Check the gasket all the way around. Looks good. Go ahead and put our screws back in here. You'll notice some of these screws are a little bit bigger than these other ones. So you got, looks like 3 and 3. The 3 thick ones go around the main gear here. And then the 3 smaller ones go over here towards the far end, like that. Then we'll take this little rubber grommet type thing, put it back over the top. And this new gearbox should be ready to install back in the ice machine for hopefully a few more years of service.